Okay, this is the part 2 of quiz 3 in geometry, proving triangles are congruent. We first talked about this figure here. We're trying to find what information is needed in order to prove that these two triangles, that would be triangle AXM, is congruent to triangle AYM. In this case, we needed an angle because we're trying to prove using side angle side congruence postulate. In this case, this is a kite, ABCD. We're trying to prove that angle A is congruent to angle C. Now we can use whatever we need to in order to prove this. However, because we know that this side is congruent to this side and this side is congruent to this side, this third side, BD, is congruent to itself, we know that first of all the triangles are congruent. And if the triangles are congruent, the corresponding parts are congruent, which is CPCTC. So by definition of CPCTC, angle A is congruent to angle C. One of my favorite shapes, if we're trying to prove that the triangles are congruent using angle side angle theorem, it says here that what information are we needing? We know that MLN is congruent to angle NOP. These two angles are congruent because it's given. We also know that vertical angles are congruent, so we don't need to ask for that information either. Additional information we are needed and are not given or cannot hypothesize would be this side LN being congruent to side NO. So we need something to indicate that those two side segments are congruent. Now this shape is very complicated. There are two overlapping triangles. So looking at the two overlapping triangles, we're trying to prove using side angle side that they are congruent, but we will need some additional information. Well, we already can deduce, or we're given, that DB is congruent to BC. That's a given. We also know that angle B here is congruent to itself by reflexive property. So what else do we need to know in order to prove that these triangles are congruent? Well, we'll also need to know that CE is congruent to AD. So we need someone to tell us that DA and CE are congruent to one another. We're still trying to figure out what else do we need to prove that this hypotenuse leg theorem is congruent. It is given that this is a right triangle by these two indicators right here that says that this angle is 90 degrees. We're also told that the hypotenuses are congruent by the dash or tick marks there. What else do we need? Well, we need a leg. Which leg is congruent to the other? We don't have it. So that's what we need. So we need to ask for additional information. Looking at this question here, it is asking us if four-sided figure, we're going to call it ABCD, ABCD, we're told that it is congruent to another figure. We're calling that figure W, X, Y, and Z. W, X, Y, and Z. Now we need to make sure that each point is in the identical location as the other. Then it's asking us to prove that, it's saying that angle B is 2x minus 12, and angle X is x plus 7. We need to find the measure of angle B using corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Well, we first don't see any triangles, so let's make some. There's our triangle. We have a triangle there that is called ADC. ADC is a triangle. We also have a triangle called CAB. CAB is a triangle. we have a triangle here, and it's called WXY, which is corresponding to ADC. We also have triangle CAB, which is corresponding to YWX. Now what are we going to do? We're going to set these two things equal to each other. These two angles equal to each other. 2x minus 12 being equal to x plus 7. Because these two angles are congruent. Now we're going to do a little bit of algebra. And x is 19. The common mistake here is clicking on 19, assuming that your answer is correct. And each time on every quiz and every test, the solution to x is given. Unfortunately, that's not what the question is asking us. It is asking, what is the measure of angle B? And angle B in this case is 2x minus 12. So now knowing what x is, we're going to do a little bit of algebra. 2x minus 12, which is the same as saying 2 times 19 plus minus 12. 2 times 19 is 38. 38 minus 12 is 26. So the measure of angle B is 26 degrees. That's the correct answer. Okay, we are given that triangle ABC is isosceles. ABC is isosceles. An isosceles triangle means two sides and two angles are congruent. But it also says we're going to prove triangle ABM is congruent to CBN. It's actually asking us, do we need additional information? ABM and CBN. Let's see what we can get out here. First, let's talk about the given. Triangle ABC is isosceles. That means two sides are congruent. At the same time, two angles are congruent. Now we're trying to prove using angle, side, that these triangles are congruent. What do we know? Well, the first thing we know is we know a side. Side AB is congruent to side BC. How do we know that? By the very definition of isosceles triangle. We also know an angle is congruent. We know that angle A is congruent to angle C. Why? The definition of isosceles triangle. So what are we missing? What we don't know is this angle here. Is angle AMB congruent to angle CNB? How do we know that? If we do know it, what can we figure it out? Where can we draw this information from? Well, it's because it's not enough information given. I can't prove those triangles are congruent until I get some additional information. And the last question here, it says, let side AB be congruent to XY and angle A be congruent to X. Using angle, side, prove ABC is congruent to XYZ. What additional information is needed to prove congruency? Well, it's geometry. Got to draw the picture. So let's just draw two triangles. Here's a triangle and here's a triangle. The first one is ABC. How do we know that? It's given. A, B, C. We also need to know that there's a second triangle, X, Y, Z. X, Y, Z. How do we know that? It's given. AB is congruent to side XY. And angle A is congruent to angle X. Well, we're trying to prove these two triangles congruent using angle, angle, side. So let's write down what we know. We know that angle A is congruent to angle X because it's given. What else do we know? Oh, segment AB is congruent to segment XY. How do we know? It's given. What are we missing? We need some sort of information to draw the conclusion that angle C and angle Z are congruent. We just don't have enough information, especially if we want to prove angle, angle, side. We don't know if they're connected. We don't know what shape it is, especially since there's no picture drawn. So we just don't have enough information. Thank you for your time and attention on for geometry, proving triangles congruent quiz 3. Have a great day.